Use headphones for best experience.
A stairwell of fused bodies. A scientist's last switch. If the forge works, the voice dies. If it doesn't, they do. Elias Vance watched Tartarus 919 loom from the star-flecked void, a jagged station clinging to the side of a barren asteroid. Its lights were almost entirely dead, save for a faint red beacon that flickered like a dying ember. In the shuttle's cockpit, Elias and Mara Jensen exchanged a tense glance. After surviving both a harrowing drift in the void and the horrors of Erebus Station, stepping into another derelict felt like tempting fate. But this was their only hope. They docked with a shuddering clang. No greeting came over the comm. Tartarus 919 was as silent as a tomb. Elias sealed his helmet, though sensors indicated the station still held a thin, stale atmosphere. Mara's voice crackled in his earpiece, hushed. "Ready?" In her gloved hands, she gripped a plasma cutter, salvaged on Erebus, its muzzle trembling slightly. Elias mustered a tight smile she couldn't see behind his visor. "Let's do it." They cycled the airlock and stepped through. The air inside was cold and carried the coppery tang of rust and blood. Even through the helmet's filters, Elias gagged at the fador of long-decayed organic matter. Mara's eyes were wide behind her faceplate, but she steadied herself. Together they raised their lights at the corridor ahead, plunging forward into the dark heart of Tartarus 919. Inside Tartarus was a maze of tight corridors and shadow-drenched chambers. Every step Elias and Mara took stirred swirls of dust and the uneasy sense of invisible eyes watching. More than once, Elias thought he saw a figure at the edge of his vision, only for his flashlight to reveal an empty junction or a dangling cable. Mara flinched at distant noises, a faint clatter, a hiss of steam. The station was playing tricks, or the marker's lingering psychic stain was twisting their senses. They pressed deeper. Flickering emergency lamps cast red halos on metal walls. In what had once been a rec room, they found the first sign of madness, spidery symbols scrawled in dried blood across the walls. Elias recognized the looping glyphs, the same marker script that had plagued victims on Erebus Station. Among the illegible scrawl, one phrase stood out, smeared in desperation: "Make us whole." Mara tore her eyes away, heart pounding. She murmured, "We have to hurry," as if fearing those words might come true if they lingered. A schematic on the wall showed the route to the mining shafts and the harmonic array below. They followed a stairwell downward, descending into the station's bowels. The further they went, the worse the air reeked, sour and iron-rich. Soon they discovered why. The stairwell ended in carnage. In a wide antechamber before the array-controlled doors, half a dozen bodies lay strewn in contorted poses. Some wore miners, coveralls, others the ceremonial garb of unitologist fanatics. Bullet holes pocked the walls, and dark, rust-like stains splashed underfoot. Mara's stomach lurched as her light revealed the centerpiece of the massacre, a cluster of corpses fused together in a grotesque embrace. Flesh and bone from multiple bodies had been somehow melted and congealed into a single blackened mass, as if they'd been caught in an intense blast. A miner's face was visible, frozen in a silent scream, half submerged in the tarry amalgam of limbs and viscera. Mara covered her mouth, fighting back nausea. Elias felt a cold sweat break over him. This was horror on a level even the marker hadn't shown on Erebus. "Khanna's experiment," he whispered. It had to be. Dr. Khanna must have activated the Null-Frequency forge during a firefight with the unitologists. And this was the outcome. A resonance catastrophe that left human bodies shattered and fused. Steeling themselves, they sidled around the fused remains and pushed open the battered doors to array control. The array control chamber yawned before them, a high-ceilinged cavern carved into the asteroid's rock. Encircling the chamber stood a ring of towering harmonic emitters, dark and silent now, but still imposing. Walkways and cables crisscrossed the expanse. At the center, on a raised platform, was the control console, and slumped over it, a familiar figure in a lab coat. Dr. Kana. Mara rushed forward, almost slipping on a pool of dried blood. Elias caught up, training his light on the body. Dr. Selena Kana's face was pale and still, eyes closed. A ragged bullet hole marred her abdomen, and her fingers were frozen around a lever on the console. Elias felt a pang of grief. Kana had been their ally on Erebus, the one who urged them to destroy the marker shard. Here lay the end of her journey. Mara gently uncurled Kana's fingers from the control lever. Her voice shook. She died trying to purge the signal, her Null-Frequency forge. Elias nodded, spotting a datapad near Kana's hand. Its cracked screen showed a few lines of her last log. Activate array, psychic backlash. Hope this works. The log ended abruptly. Elias bowed his head. Kana had believed these seismic arrays could cancel the marker's psychic echo, and paid with her life. A clang of metal boots on the walkway snapped them to attention. From the shadows, two figures emerged with guns raised. They wore makeshift armor, emblazoned with the unitology symbol. Mara and Elias ducked behind the console as a voice echoed, "Step away from the machine." It was a man's voice, edged with fanatic zeal. The marker's gift must not be destroyed. Elias's heart pounded. The unitologists had survivors here. Mara stood, keeping low, her plasma cutter aimed. "Look around you," she shouted. "The marker's gift did this!" She gestured at the fused corpses visible through the doorway, her face twisted with anger and fear. "It's madness!" "The only madness is to defy God's blueprint," growled the second cultist, a woman. Her eyes were fever bright behind her visor. "Dr. Kana defied it, and we cleansed her. We'll do the same to you." As she spoke, Elias inched along the side of the console. With a silent signal to Mara, he burst up, firing a stun round from the handgun he'd taken off a dead security guard upstairs. The shot struck the male cultist squarely, and he went down with a crackling cry. Mara simultaneously squeezed off a plasma bolt that sizzled past the female cultist's head as the woman dove aside. The fanatic screamed in fury and returned fire. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted off the console. One round clipped Mara's upper arm. She hissed in pain but held her aim. Elias vaulted over the platform railing and rushed the shooter. She spun too late. He slammed into her full force. They tumbled to the floor in a heap. Her pistol skittered away, and Elias pinned her wrist as she slashed at him with a combat knife. Mara staggered over, blood seeping through her sleeve, and pressed the hot muzzle of the plasma cutter to the cultist's helmet. "Don't move," Mara warned, voice icy. The woman glared defiantly for a moment, then relented with a snarl, dropping the knife. Elias hurriedly bound her wrists with a cable tie from his toolkit. He glanced at Mara's wound. It was a graze, nothing fatal. Mara nodded, jaw set through the pain. "I'm fine. We have to finish what Kana started." Elias dragged the unconscious male cultist out of the way and kicked his gun down a crevice in the floor. The captive female began to laugh under her breath, a hollow, crazed sound. "You think ending this will matter? The song of the marker is infinite. You can't silence God." Elias tried to ignore her, but her words slithered under his skin. Mara's trembling hand hovered over the master activation switch. "Ready?" she asked, eyes full of dread yet determined. He stepped to her side and covered her hand with his own. Together, they pulled the switch. At first, nothing happened, just a heavy thrum vibrating through the floor. Then, the harmonic emitters around the cavern awoke. A rising tone reverberated, low and deep enough to rattle their teeth. Elias and Mara doubled over as pressure built inside their skulls. The marker's psychic echo, that parasitic presence, latched to their minds. seemed to sense the threat and fought back fiercely. Both clutched their heads as a keening pain needled behind their eyes. The bound cultist began to scream, thrashing against her bonds. Across the platform, the unconscious zealot twitched as the resonance intensified. The sound from the arrays climbed in frequency, a discordant chorus that drowned reality. Elias could no longer tell if the shrieks he heard were Mara's, the cultist's, or his own. All was swallowed by the all-encompassing whine. He felt a warm trickle from his ears and realized they were bleeding. Staggering, he tried to reach Mara but fell to his knees. Visions swarmed Elias's mind in the sonic maelstrom. In the strobing light, he saw shapes that shouldn't exist, faceless figures crawling out of the fused corpse pile, reaching for him with melting hands. He squeezed his eyes shut, only to behold an inner nightmare, his late crewmates from Erebus, their faces warped and eyeless, whispering blame. Elias opened his mouth to scream, and a thick coil of black bile poured out, spilling over his suit. He panicked, clawing at his helmet, and the vision shattered into another. The marker shard itself rose before him, glowing and spinning until it cracked apart and morphed into a swarm of skittering insects that surged toward his eyes. Mara, too, was caught in the hallucinations. She saw her own body dissolving, skin sloughing off in wet chunks to reveal glistening muscle and bone. Her long-dead father's voice roared in her ears, condemning her for all she had done. Through the haze, she glimpsed Elias on his knees, retching something dark. In reality, Elias was gasping for air, but to Mara's broken perception, it looked as if a serpentine limb was slithering out of his mouth. She recoiled in horror, nearly backing off the platform's edge. The null-frequency wave crescendoed, glass shattered in the control console, and sparks exploded from overstressed circuits. One of the massive emitter towers sheared off its mount with a shriek of metal, crashing down into the cavern. The bound unitologist convulsed violently. Blood streamed from her nose and eyes as she let out one last gurgling wail. Her body contorted unnaturally, joints bending the wrong way. Then, with a sickening rip, she fell limp and still. The other cultist never awoke at all, already bleeding from every orifice as the relentless vibrations tore through his brain. Elias felt as if his head were splitting open. Some rational part of him knew they had to endure this. The forge was their last chance to be free. Summoning the last reserves of his will, he crawled across the swaying platform to Mara. She was curled in a fetal ball, eyes open but unseeing, lips moving in silent pleas. He grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her. "Mara!" he tried to shout. He couldn't even hear his own voice over the howling din, but she sensed him. Her gaze latched onto his face, pupils dilated with terror. Elias pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her in a fierce embrace as debris rained around them. If they were going to die, they would die together, defying the marker's hold to the end. Mara clung to him. The two of them crouched amid the storm of noise and nightmares, each anchoring the other to reality. Inch by excruciating inch, second by second, the resonant wave did its work. The marker's psychic scream rose to a deafening peak in their minds, and then, at last, began to ebb. The vile visions attacking their sanity thinned like smoke on the wind. Elias felt the pressure in his skull lessening, the foreign presence being peeled away layer by layer. He could sense the echo's fury turning to panic, then to silence. Abruptly, one by one, the emitters overloaded and fell quiet. The blaring tone died, echoing into nothing. In the sudden stillness, Elias could hear his own ragged breathing. They were alive. The array platform was a wreck of toppled equipment and rubble, but they were alive. Elias released his grip slightly. "Mara," he croaked, throat raw. She lifted her head from his shoulder. There was blood on her face. Maybe his, maybe hers, but a dazed smile formed on her lips. "It's gone," Mara whispered. She pressed a trembling hand to the side of her head, almost disbelieving the absence of the noise that had haunted them for so long. The constant whisper was truly gone. "I can't feel it at all. Elias, it worked." A weak, astonished laugh escaped him. The emptiness where the marker's voice had been was like a cool breeze in their minds. "It worked," he echoed, half in disbelief. He helped Mara unsteadily to her feet. All around, the station groaned. The violent vibrations had critically damaged Tartarus 919's structure. Pebbles of dust trickled from cracks in the rock ceiling. They needed to leave, fast. Leaning on each other, they hurried back the way they came, past the field of butchered dead. Nothing moved now but flickering shadows. The oppressive evil that had saturated the station seemed to lift, leaving only the grim after-image of its horrors. They reached the shuttle and sealed the hatch just as Tartarus 919 shuddered in its death throes. Engines ignited, and the small craft detached from the failing station. Through the viewport, Elias watched sections of Tartarus collapse into the asteroid's crater in clouds of debris. The derelict would bury its secrets forever. In the quiet of the drifting shuttle, Mara let out a broken sob, relief, grief, and exhaustion, all crashing over her in a tidal wave. Elias wrapped an arm around her, and she buried her face in his chest. They had survived. Against all odds, they had broken the marker's curse on their minds. After a time, Mara wiped her eyes and looked up at him. "Is it really over?" she asked softly. The uncertainty in her tone betrayed a lingering fear. Elias thought of Dr. Khanna, of the unitologists, of the other marker relics rumored to be scattered across the stars. He remembered the cultist's final deranged laugh. Was it over? He managed a weary smile for Mara's sake. "I think so. The echo is gone for now." Mara nodded slowly, accepting that uncertain answer. It would have to be enough. As their shuttle flew away from Tartarus, they both dared to hope the nightmare was finally behind them. Yet far out in the cosmic abyss, something ancient stirred. Elias felt a prickle of dread, as if an unseen presence were slowly turning its gaze back toward them. If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like, comment, or share this video with your friends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories like this one.